Hello and welcome. Here's what's happening right now. Summer begins with a violent storm system striking parts of the country.
Tanker got thrown over half a mile.
Possible tornadoes touch down, causing widespread damage.
It looked like a multi-story building coming down.
The death toll climbs in a dangerous rock slide. We learn how one woman survived.
I'm grateful that the Conservatives saw the light to support Bill C-5.
Lawmakers go on overtime to pass a controversial bill before Parliament rises.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
The first day of summer, and we are seeing some wild swings in weather across the country, including possible tornadoes in Saskatchewan and Quebec, a heat wave forecasted for Ontario, heavy rain, and even a chance of snow in parts of BC and Alberta. And we have developing news on that deadly rock slide in Banff National Park. CTV's Alison Bamford starts us off with the extreme weather in Saskatoon. Alison.
Heather, Environment Canada is looking into what it calls a possible tornado outbreak, which is when 6 to 10 tornadoes touch down.
To have 8 tornadoes in one day is a substantial event.
The storms spanned from southeast of Saskatoon down to the southeastern corner of the province. The first one hitting just before 4:30 yesterday afternoon. The last one clocked in shortly after 9 p.m. This video was taken near Davin and Lejord, east of Regina. The storm ripped apart the roof of these buildings, scattering debris across the area. There are no reports of any injuries. CTV News spoke with storm chaser Ricky Forbes, who was in the Frobisher, Saskatchewan area last night, where 3 of the 8 possible tornadoes were spotted.
So multiple down power lines. And like I said, the one oil field tanker got thrown over half a mile into another farmer's field. So that shows the power that this storm had.
Saskatchewan has already seen 4 tornadoes this season. While still unconfirmed, yesterday's possible tornadoes could bring the count to 12, already closing in on the yearly average of 15, with 3 months of tornado season still ahead. Heather?
CTV's Alison Bamford in Saskatoon. Thank you. Violent storms, including a possible tornado, rolled into parts of Quebec last night. Powerful winds tore off roofs and knocked out power to tens of thousands in the eastern townships. Environment Canada says the storm produced winds of 100 kilometers per hour and hailstones as big as golf balls in central Quebec. Developing news in Alberta, where RCMP say a second person has died after a rock slide in Banff National Park yesterday. CTV's Mark Villani is near the scene with the latest details for us. Mark.
I'm standing here in Lake Louise, just a short distance away from Bow Glacier Falls Trail, where a deadly rock slide occurred just on Thursday afternoon in Banff National Park. Now, this was a very devastating scene. We're now confirming from RCMP and Parks Canada 2 people that have been killed, 3 others that are injured, and it launched a very comprehensive search and rescue effort. Helicopters involved, several ambulances lining the road. This was a big panic we're hearing from those that did survive this. Now, the RCMP and Parks Canada have not confirmed the identities of the 2 victims, but we do know that one of them is a 70-year-old woman from the Calgary area. Authorities also confirming right now that they don't believe anybody else to be missing. Now, earlier today, we did speak with one of those survivors, Elizabeth Jackson. She was out there solo yesterday with her dogs in tow. She described this moment of terror when she heard rocks cracking from above. And then, all of a sudden, the moment she had to run for her life.
And I just looked over my left shoulder and saw this whole slab of rock. It looked like a multi-story building coming down. Yeah, and as soon as it started, I mean, it was a huge piece. It just started falling, and when it was hitting the ground, it was starting to crumble and burst into boulders. And It was just a blur from there. I just got up and I ran.
Jackson says that she ran through a cloud of dust and debris. Several people, she say, were sprawled out throughout the trail. Some people trapped underneath rocks, others just in complete shock as she came back to try and help them while waiting for helicopters to arrive. Now, geologists we spoke with say that years of water seeping into the fractured rock is likely what triggered this slide, a very natural but also a dangerous process. Now, the trail to Bow Glacier Falls does remain closed at this time, while other nearby routes have since reopened. For now, though, Parks Canada saying take extreme caution, make sure that you are safe and respecting all trail closures at all times. Mark Villani, CTV News in Lake Louise.
Thousands of people in Manitoba are returning to their communities hit by wildfires nearly a month after being forced to evacuate due to the flames.
Ensuring that medical staff are able to return to the community, that hydro is up and running, that law enforcement has been able to be reestablished.
The city of Flin Flon is preparing for more than 5,000 people to be back starting Wednesday. The evacuation order for Lynn Lake was lifted today.
Thanks to all the first responders throughout the last few days. They've been doing a lot of work, of course, to keep the fire suppressed as much as possible.
Newfoundland and Labrador Premier John Hogan delivering good news to residents of Badger, saying crews had successfully managed to keep the wildfire from jumping a crucial river just across the town, allowing them to return home. There's a heat wave heading to parts of the country. CTV's Your Morning Chief Meteorologist Kelsey McEwen has a look at the national forecast for us. Kelsey.
Well, in that first week of astronomical summer, we are going to kick off our first heat wave of the summer. We will see temperatures rise from today through Sunday. And not only will the temperatures rise, but so will the humidity. Now, this heat event is going to pull air directly from the Gulf of Mexico and that hot, humid air mass. Once it arrives, it sticks around. So we're talking Sunday, we're talking Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, as this upper ridge really begins to build over the region. It's fueled by this upper low that's sitting right off the Pacific Northwest coast, and that amplifies the ridge. And when we get into a position where this happens, that air is quite stagnant over the region and has a hard time shifting outward. So while heat warnings may last until Wednesday and drop for Thursday, Friday, it will still be warm in those final days of the week. Now, while that's happening on the eastern side of the country, Western Canada prepping for heavy rainfall across the region. Not only are we talking extensive rainfall totals, but for some at the higher terrain, this will flip over to, yes, I'm going to say it, snow through the mountain parks as we go through the next couple of days. Heaviest rainfall and precipitation will be Friday through end of day Saturday. Heather, back to you.
Quite the start to summer, Kelsey. Thanks. The House of Commons is set to rise for summer break today, and there was a lot on the government's agenda. CTV's Rachel Ayala was following the developments in Ottawa for us. Rachel, the government is trying to pass a new economic development bill in time. What can you tell us?
Yeah, Heather. So I can tell you now that in part, they just have. The first of two votes on this controversial Bill C5 has just cleared the House of Commons nearly unanimously. We have 334 MPs voting in favor of one part of the bill. This is the part that has to do with breaking down interprovincial trade barriers and addressing labor mobility. Now, as we speak, they are currently voting on the second portion of this bill. This is where the contention really lied, Heather. This was where there was concerns from Indigenous groups about running roughshod over their rights. So we are not expecting it to be quite as unanimous of a vote. We've heard major objections from Bloc and NDP MPs, but with the backing of Conservatives, we are expecting that portion of the bill to pass as well. Soon after that ends, MPs will be adjourning for the summer.
Okay, and Rachel, just quickly, the Prime Minister also held a virtual meeting with Canada's premiers and territorial leaders. Just quickly, what are you hearing?
Yeah, so we are expecting to hear more from Prime Minister Carney on this shortly when he takes reporters' questions, but we do know that he briefed them on his meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump on the sidelines of the G7, as well as his plans to amend Canada's metals counter tariffs on steel and aluminum if the state of those trade talks don't go a positive way in the next 30 days. Heather?
All right, Rachel, thank you. Later in the show, Omar Sachedina speaks to the Governor General about her thoughts on Bill C-5. The Quebec mother accused of abandoning her 3-year-old daughter in rural Ontario will remain in detention until a bail hearing next month. The 3-year-old girl was spotted by a police drone along a highway about 50 kilometers from the Quebec border Wednesday, which is 4 days after her mother reported the girl missing. The 34-year-old woman was in court today and faces 1 count of unlawful abandonment of a child. Her lawyer says the woman is in great distress and was extremely relieved when her daughter was found. The search for a missing 18-year-old in Brandon, Manitoba is ongoing. Owen Bedford was last seen this past Sunday leaving a bar in the city with his friends. CTV's Alex Carpa spoke with the family today, a very emotional time for them, Alex.
Heather, I spoke to Owen Bedford's sister, Jordan, and she tells me the last few days have been the worst of her life. Owen was last seen around 2 a.m. this past Sunday leaving a bar on Victoria Avenue with some friends. Since then, family and friends have been searching areas throughout the city. Jordan tells me that they are doing everything they can to find her brother.
We're not giving up. We are here with you, and you are not alone. So at the end of the day, we will keep going until you're here.
You guys are going to go to Zone 63. That'll be on the map. That's in the WhatsApp group.
Ty Worthington is a family friend and is working around the clock to help the family find the 18-year-old.
So we are planning to cover the full coverage of Brandon and outside Brandon. There is no area that we are not going to cover here. We have covered a decent amount so far, but there's still lots that we want to cover and lots we want to double check.
The family is asking residents here in the Brandon area to check their ring, door, and garage cameras between 1:45 and 5 a.m. on Sunday, June 15th, as they continue to try and find their loved one. Heather?
Alex Carpa in Brandon for us. Turning now to the conflict between Israel and Iran. There were tense talks today between European and Iranian officials as Donald Trump says he could make a decision anytime in the next 2 weeks over U.S. military action in Iran. CTV's Heather Wright on the talks and the attacks from both sides.
Sirens sound over Jerusalem as Iran and Israel trade fresh attacks for the 8th consecutive day as diplomatic efforts to contain the conflict took place in Geneva.
Mr. Minister, how are you, sir?
Iran's foreign minister met with top diplomats from Britain, France, and Germany today, a meeting that ended with no signs of a breakthrough. Asked about it, U.S. President Donald Trump said it will be the Americans, not the Europeans, that solve this conflict, though he seemed to reject Iran's demand for Israel to halt its airstrikes in order for talks to resume.
I think it's very hard to make that request right now. If somebody's winning, it's a little bit harder to do than if somebody's losing.
Trump says he will decide within the next 2 weeks whether the United States will join this conflict and provide Israel with the bunker-busting bomb it needs to hit Iran's nuclear site Fordo, which is buried deep in a mountain.
If they launch that bunker buster, now we got United States, in a war with Israel, fighting against a power that called Iran that wants to have a nuclear capability. It could then potentially draw in Russia. It could, raise the dander of China. So, this would change the political calculus tremendously, and I don't think anybody wants that to happen.
Global Affairs Canada says it's organizing flights in neighboring countries, urging Canadians in Israel and Iran to head to Jordan, Turkey, and Armenia. Hi, Hossein. Hossein Hodabash is among the many trying to leave Iran. He's not Canadian, but has lived in Toronto since 2019 and has a valid work permit. He was in Iran to visit his sick mum, but when he tried to leave, he discovered his temporary resident visa is expired, and he can't get back into Canada until a new one arrives.
When the war happened, it was like just a nightmare. I don't know about the future. I have no idea what's going to happen.
Airspace above both Israel and Iran is closed, and while Canada has an embassy in Israel, it has had no diplomatic ties with Iran since 2012, further complicating efforts to get Canadians out of the country. Heather.
CTV's Heather Wright reporting from Toronto. Coming up, following the paper trail.
It's a great way for criminals to make money.
W5 goes behind a stolen vehicle scam that includes something called a Franken car. All week, W5 has been investigating how thieves disguise stolen cars for sale here in Canada, a process known as revinning. And for it to work, thieves often exploit weaknesses in car registration systems run by provincial governments. CTV's John Woodward joins us now. John, tell us all about these weaknesses.
Well, Heather, it all comes down to how easy it is to put a different vehicle identification number on a stolen car. And there are plenty of ways to do this, but the hardest way to detect it is when you do it at the source, at the government registry. Sometimes you're doing it by bamboozling the government worker, but sometimes they're in on the scam itself. And that happened earlier. Somebody in Service Ontario was convicted of doing just that earlier this year. So one proposed solution is to physically inspect these cars, or some of these cars, as they're registered. That is a way to catch cases where one car is pretending to be a different car, or as we found in our investigation tonight, two cars are pretending to be one car.
We have a 2014 Dodge Ram that after examination it was found that it's actually sitting on a 2021 Dodge Ram frame that was stolen.
Two different cars put into one.
That is correct.
A Franken car.
A Franken car, that's right.
The entire Franken car was seized as stolen property. The unsuspecting buyers on the hook for car payments, Fair says. And it's just one example of how more stolen cars are being mixed in with the legitimate supply, more common in Ontario, but edging west across the country, Fair says.
It's an incredibly high reward to be able to take a wrecked vehicle, put stolen parts on it, and then sell it to some victim.
How much money are we talking about?
Tens of thousands of dollars.
Per truck?
Per truck.
John, this is an incredible investigation that you've been looking into all week. You have brought this forward to some politicians. What has the response been like?
Well, we've had a great response from a variety of politicians across the country, but none more than Premier Doug Ford in Ontario, who, as you may recall, had his own vehicle targeted by thieves in an operation earlier this week. So he told us, and we'll have more on this tonight, but he told us that he is going to improve the tracking and the vehicle physical vehicle inspections, all better to stop these cars from slipping through. A measure that might, be a bit late because we do have, according to some estimates, about 140,000 ReVin cars on Canadian roads right now.
Incredible. Okay, and as John mentioned, you can catch the full episode tonight on CTV National News. That's at 11 o'clock. Still ahead, reflections at Rideau Hall. Omar Sachedina speaks with the Governor General on the eve of National Indigenous Peoples Day. Tomorrow is National Indigenous Peoples Day, a time to recognize and celebrate traditions. But a decade after the Truth and Reconciliation report was released, a vast majority of the calls to action haven't been implemented. CTV's chief anchor and senior editor Omar Sachedina spoke with Governor General Mary Simon.
In the Heart Garden on the grounds of Rideau Hall, symbols of the courage, sacrifice, and pain of students who went through the residential school system.
I remember the sacrifice these students made. They lost their lives to try and get an education.
There are still denialists out there who underplay what happened. What's your message to them?
It's not made up. Denialism needs to be addressed, and I think one of the ways in which we need to do this as a country is to put it into our education system.
10 years after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission released a report with 94 calls to action, only 13 have been implemented. The Governor General has strong reflections on the progress still needed.
A lot of Indigenous people tell me that they feel that it has gone way too slow.
Do you personally feel that the progress has been slow?
Looking at it from an Indigenous viewpoint, everything is slow, I find.
At a time when Ottawa is pushing legislation to fast-track infrastructure projects, there's concern from some Indigenous groups who feel it tramples on their rights. Some even calling on the Governor General to deny or delay that legislation. No Governor General has refused royal assent. This one, a former Indigenous advocate, admits to the occasional challenge of now serving in a role that must be kept apolitical.
Do you feel as though those two identities clash for you at times?
It's not so much a clash. I struggle with those issues as an individual, as a person, as a human. The Prime Minister has conveyed that he's going to consult and include Indigenous people in the economic development of the country.
Her family history is tied closely to Canada's oldest company. She grew up in Nunavik with her Inuk mother and white father, who managed a local Hudson's Bay outpost. We visited it in northern Quebec back in 2021, shortly before she was installed. With HBC going bust, there are concerns about the fate of thousands of historic Indigenous artifacts. The company was recently given the green light to move forward with an auction to pay off creditors.
Any artifacts that are directly related to any Indigenous community, I think, should be brought back. These are things that belong to the people.
Her duty to the people of Canada and the Crown on display recently during a royal visit from King Charles.
The true North is indeed strong and free.
Were you surprised when the King used those words?
No, I wasn't really surprised. I think the North is strong and free. It has always been strong and free. To provide a message in a throne speech to the international community saying our Canadian North is true, strong and free is appropriate.
A country strong and free, for which she shares a powerful message of optimism.
There will always be times when things become more difficult. And I try and talk about hope, because hope is not just the future. Hope is today.
After the break. 50 years since Jaws. Today marks the 50th anniversary of the monster movie hit Jaws. CTV's John Benavali-Rao on how it changed Hollywood and our perception of sharks.
This shark, swallow you whole.
Undoubtedly the most famous two notes in movie history. Jaws was packed to the gills, not just with memorable music, but so many iconic scenes and legendary lines.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
The tale of a massive shark terrorizing a sleepy seaside New England town, picking off beachgoers, and 50 years ago becoming an instant smash, #1 at the U.S. box office for 14 consecutive weeks and terrifying audiences. Directed by a 27-year-old Steven Spielberg. In a new documentary, he reveals the movie was way over budget and 100 days over schedule.
I was terrified I was going to be fired.
But instead, the film was credited with inventing the summer blockbuster.
It set the template for the way that summer movies were released. Before Jaws, the summer was kind of considered to be a downtime for theaters.
Everybody likes the original poster T-shirt.
In the Martha's Vineyard town where the movie was filmed, they're ready to cash in on the anniversary. But not everyone thinks the film should be celebrated. It instilled a deep fear of sharks that led to them being hunted more and put an already endangered species at greater risk. One man recently swam in the waters where the movie was made to raise awareness about them.
My message to people around the world is we have to protect sharks.
Still, there's been a string of shark scares this week, including a 9-year-old bitten off Florida. And spotted just off Rhode Island, a massive 7-meter-long basking shark, though it poses no threat to humans. Unlike that movie shark, still scaring audiences 50 years later. John Benavali-Rao, CTV News.
That is our newscast for this Friday. Thank you for watching. Your local CTV News starts right now.